Joining me now on set is Julia Manchester, national politics reporter for The Hill, Faiz Shakir, senior advisor to Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, and Republican strategist Garrett Ventry. Welcome to all of you and Happy New Year. Thank you all for being here. Julia, let me start with you. So we are just 10 days out from Iowa. You heard Nikki Haley there, defiant, defending her conservative credentials. What are you going to be watching for?
Yeah, so in Iowa, I'm watching for former President Trump. We've put so much, I think, stock into Governor Ron DeSantis and how he's really built up his organization in Iowa, whether Nikki Haley can trail him or catch up with him. But I think we've seen Trump very quietly building this organization. Now it's really coming to light. I think sometimes we get distracted by the national stories and the court stories, all of that, but he really has perfected the operation in Iowa. And I'm really watching to see what happens to Ron DeSantis, because he's put all of his eggs in the Iowa basket. So there's the question of where does he go if he doesn't come in first or second?
Yeah, it's such a great question, Garrett. I mean, are we at a place where anyone can catch up to Trump? He has such a commanding lead heading into Iowa.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, the short answer is no. I mean, we've seen this nationally. He's up 50 points. In Iowa, he's up 30 points. New Hampshire is up 15 points. In South Carolina, he's up 30 points. So just really tough to overcome here. And it's not just that, like 2016, when he had this plurality lead with a crowded field. He's in a crowded field. He's hitting 60% of the vote. And so I think it's tough here. I don't think Ron DeSantis, if he loses in Iowa by 20 or 30 points, I don't see a path forward for him. And Nikki Haley certainly can't afford to lose to him in New Hampshire. I don't know how then you go into South Carolina and suffer a 20 or 30 point loss there politically. So I think Donald Trump is running away with this thing, and it's really no one's been able to catch him at this point.
Faiz, Democrats basically, you heard President Biden today make this case about democracy, about the threat that former President Trump poses to democracy. Are they prepared for any other candidate to break through, or are they basically saying we have to assume it's Trump at this point?
Well, you have to be prepared for anybody to break through, but it is helpful that Nikki Haley's not making his argument a bit, and I think it's helpful to have somebody, he's so disruptive out there, he's so chaotic. Right, isn't that what Joe Biden's making the same argument? So in some sense, I'm sure that they welcome Nikki Haley in the final stretches trying to make the case of a dysfunctional person you can't trust to put back in the Oval Office. And I think that at some point, I agree with everything Garrett was saying about the numbers, that somebody would have to beat, if you're going to go with the king, you have to beat the king somewhere. And it seems like Haley's got the best shot, and it would have to be in New Hampshire. In order to win New Hampshire, you'd have to show some momentum in Iowa. And if you come in third in Iowa, I don't think that's the momentum you're looking for. So I would say the highest stakes are for her. She's got to get a second place finish and look like you're cresting.
Julia, do you think that the folks who don't come in, who don't have a strong showing, a strong second place showing, are they going to take that hard look at their campaign and say, time to drop out?
If you're Ron DeSantis, absolutely. If you're Nikki Haley or Chris Christie, not necessarily, because they've both run more New Hampshire-centric campaigns. I don't expect Chris Christie to do well in Iowa. I don't really expect Nikki Haley to necessarily knock it out of the park either. But there is the question, off to what Faiz was saying. If Chris Christie were to drop out, theoretically, that does put Haley closer to Trump in New Hampshire, and it might make them a little nervous, but at the same time, it still doesn't put her within striking distance.
And that's really the question, who can get within striking distance of Trump? As I said, President Biden was talking about January 6th today, really framing that around his race. The Republican candidates are talking about January 6th in very different terms. I want to play a little bit of what Nikki Haley and Governor DeSantis had to say in our series with Dasha.
What lessons do you think the country learned from January 6th, and what did you personally take away from that day?
It's a terrible day. We can never let that happen again. I don't know anybody that saw what happened that didn't, have their heart fall to their stomach. We just don't want to see that happen again. And I think that we owe it, all of us, to make sure that doesn't happen again. Now, I will say, you had a lot of people show up at the Capitol. Not everybody did something wrong. A lot of them went and were using freedom of speech and their ability to protest to do what they wanted. But the ones that went in, the ones that broke the law, those are the ones you have to hold them accountable. You have to make sure that they pay the price to show that it will never happen again.
What lessons did the country learn from January 6th? What did you also personally take away from that day?
Well, look, I mean, I think it's been politicized by the left. I don't think it was supposed to be. That was not supposed to happen. I think people went to protest, and I think it got out of hand. I think
it's something that happened to our nation. What do you think we can take away from it?
I don't. I think that's more of a media with the anniversary. I know that this is like Christmas Day for the media, like to talk about January 6th. I know it's a big deal in a lot of the corporate outlets. I get that. I've not had a single question in Iowa about January 6th.
Garrett, what do you make of those two very different responses on January 6th? Who has the better general election message?
Yeah, so I think if you step back and we can look at this in obviously a primary, we can look at a general too.
Right.
President Trump's leading in the polls right now, obviously in the primary, but it's not just in the primary. You've got to take a step back here. Democrats have used January 6th the last 3 years against President Trump. They impeached him about January 6th. They did a congressional investigation about January 6th. 50% of the indictments are about January 6th. Taking him off the ballot is tied to January 6th. So they've done that, and what have the results been? Donald Trump's beating Joe Biden in a lot of polls going forward here. And because the reason is although people may think the attack on the Capitol was very bad, they didn't like it, they thought it was a threat to democracy, maybe they didn't like some of President Trump's actions that day, it's not ticking as the number 1, 2, or 3 issues going into 2024. It's immigration, economy, inflation, and voters don't like Joe Biden on that. So, of course, Democrats want to make it about January 6th. They want to make it about a threat to democracy. I find it interesting Joe Biden says democracy is on the ballot when they're trying to take Donald Trump off the ballot in numerous states as well.
Faiz, how do you respond to that?
Well, Nikki Haley's trying to offer a general election message that she thinks would better position her to go talk to a lot of independent voters who have serious concerns about Donald Trump. I think I don't dispute that some of the numbers that you're offering around Biden's current weakness, but I think it's going to gain strength as we get an A versus B matchup, a rematch, and people, those who are sitting on the fence who haven't already decided, because most of the electorate will already know where they're at the first day that this general election kicks off. The few who haven't have that serious concern. Are we going to rerun the 4 years of chaos of Trump? And she's speaking to that. Obviously, there's a reason why Trump calls her bird brain, because he's just very upset about like her having this very rational perspective. So I'm happy for them to duke it out in a Republican primary and see where it lands.
You speak to why there are real questions about whether he would actually pick her as his vice presidential nominee, by the way. That's another panel discussion we'll have. But, Julia, let's stay on this topic of January 6th, because President Biden sort of officially launched his reelection campaign with this big, sweeping, very impassioned speech today. And some Democrats are saying, boy, they wish he had ramped up the rhetoric earlier. They wish he'd gotten tough like this about 6 months ago.
Absolutely, and it seems like he's been inching towards this, okay, this is looks like I'm going to be matched up against Trump again. He's been telegraphing that a little bit, but boom, today he had that very impassioned speech. You know, this strategy sort of reminds me of Pennsylvania in 2022 with Doug Mastriano and Josh Shapiro. It seems like Joe Biden is taking a play out of Josh Shapiro's playbook and trying to run on this issue. We know Josh Shapiro did that quite a bit against Doug Mastriano. The only difference here is that I think Donald Trump is in a bit of a stronger position than Doug Mastriano was in Pennsylvania. But we saw Democrats do well on this in 2022. But the question is, there's so many other factors this time around.
Faiz, does President Biden run the risk of over-indexing on this issue? I mean, how much does he need to balance talking about these other issues that Garrett's talking about, the border,
definitely
the
a concern of over-indexing, because when you think, like, I think a lot of people have made up their mind and judgments on democracy. I think it's going to be hard to persuade. Whether you reaffirm and remind people about it is one thing, but persuade is going to be hard. So you got to work on the areas of persuasion. I do think when you think about prescription drug prices, there's certain things that we don't even know where Donald Trump stands. Like, he campaigned on, let's say, taking on big pharma, I'm going to drain the swamp and all this stuff. Do we know that, like, okay, Biden put in place Medicare price negotiation? What's Donald Trump's view on that? And I think there's a bunch of things that are going to be economic in nature. Corporate tax rate went up under President Biden. He instituted an increase of the wealthy paying their fair share. What does Donald Trump think about that? Antitrust, right? Here's a bunch of, we're taking on some large corporate monopolies. How does Donald Trump feel about it? There's a lot of these issues that have not been touched by Donald Trump. We don't know where he stands. And I think that could be a decider of the persuaders.
Garrett, what's your response to that? And also, I'm curious, because obviously these negotiations going on Capitol Hill, you raised the issue of the border. If they get a deal, how much of a gift is that to President Biden, which, by the way, a lot of Republicans have been whispering to me this would be a boon to him in a general election? Right.
First, a quick response. I mean, on antitrust specifically, the Google case came under Biden's or Trump's DOJ going into it. But I would say that the issue is Bidenomics, these things that he's sold to the American people, they're just not buying them, right? So there might be things that he's, has policy accomplishments, but overall they're not buying them. If you take a step back, too, I think going up, it's going to be, were you better off 3 to 4 years ago? And that's the question that people are going to have to answer going into the election. And right now, they feel like they're not, and they feel like they were better off under Donald Trump. On the border specifically, a lot of Republicans do share that concern, right? Giving a win to Democrats going into a general election. So I think there's still going to be a lot of devil in the details there. You've got the House Freedom Caucus that are going to want a very hardline bill that they've already passed H.R. 2. And the Senate seems like they're not even fully fleshed out with their, negotiations. So we'll see what happens there.
And they're threatening to shut down the government over it. So we'll have you back to talk about that.
If there wasn't a government shutdown threat, it wouldn't be politics.
There you go. What a great Friday conversation. Thank you so much, Julia, Faiz, and Garrett. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.